What are some of the best channels to subscribe to and X accounts to follow going into 2025 when you want to learn about Bitcoin, crypto, or investing in general? There's a lot of people with a lot of content out there, and I compiled a top 10 list on YouTube channels that I subscribe to that I think you should probably subscribe to as well. There's some other accounts that I've just started following, but if it's only been a few months, I don't include them on the list. So there may be others that you're thinking of that should be on the list and very well might be on next year's list. But if I haven't listened to them and followed them long enough, if they're too new, I don't include them on the list. So let's get started. I think one of the best ones is a good channel, but specifically, it's a particular show on that channel. I'm talking about Scott Melker's Wolf of All Streets channel. He has a lot of good guests on. I don't necessarily recommend the channel for his viewpoints. He is pretty muted and vanilla as far as what he talks about, but he has some really good talent on his channel. A lot of good interviews. The one that I'm talking about, the top tier, the number one that everybody should be listening for, is their Macro Monday episode. Every Monday, sometimes Tuesday, or if there's holidays, they skip a week. But every Monday, I look forward to this show like all weekend long. It is what I look forward to on a Monday morning. Here's what's interesting about it. He generally has the same guests, which is Mike McClone, a guy from Bloomberg, James Lavish. He's a guy that's really big into bonds, T-bills market. He understands the bond market quite well, pretty much an expert in that field. And then Dave Weisberger. He's got a company that he just recently retired from called Coin Routes. What's interesting is the way that these guys actually have a discussion and interconnect their discussion. A lot of them are on the same page, but they do differ in specific things. You got Mike McClone, who's earned the nickname Mike McGloom. He is kind of a bear as far as Bitcoin. Although he believes in it long term, just like the other guests do and the host, he has some opinions that, at least in the short term time frames that are not talking more than a few years out, that he thinks people should stay away from Bitcoin. I'll tell you what's interesting about him is, unlike somebody like Peter Schiff, Peter Schiff is a smart guy, but he's been wrong every single time he has an opinion on Bitcoin for the entirety of his entire channel. He's just been flat wrong, and he continues to be wrong, and he will continue to be wrong. He will die wrong, just like Munger did, and like Warren Buffett will. I mean, that'll be like the Mount Rushmore of people that have been wrong about Bitcoin and refuse to learn about it. But Mike, although he has some opinions that cause some disagreements on the show, he has valid reasons for why he thinks in the short term it's not going to do well. He talks a lot about how it's correlated to current assets, equity markets, like the S&P 500, and it's just more volatile. So when the markets go down, it's going to go down more. He hasn't seen proof that it's really a divergence from that, which you can agree or disagree with that opinion. That's a healthy debate to have. I mean, he backs it up with reasoning and facts. Now, you can disagree with that. You can call him wrong, and he has been wrong on other things. So that's the kind of conversation we should be having in an open discussion. Whereas like Peter Schiff will pick something on a narrow time frame that says, oh, gold's performed better than Bitcoin in these 3.5 months, starting from this Wednesday and all the way up to that Tuesday. Or he'll say something, he'll pick a different time frame where something is skewed to the benefit of like silver and copper versus Bitcoin, or some FUD about Bitcoin from years past. And once you lose all those, like when Bitcoin makes new highs and gold hasn't, and he doesn't have any of those little time windows currently that he can reference, he just says it has no value without actually giving supports on why there's no value. And he'll have guests and debates that actually explain why there is value. He ends up saying there's no value and considers that the end of the conversation. So I like that. There is a little bit of repetitiveness in the show. You have Dave Weisberger always talking about how Bitcoin's trading like an option on its future adoption. You got Mike, kind of like I said, talking about how it's not how it's correlated and it hasn't really been divergence from the markets. Mike also kind of has you always got to consider people's biases too when you think about these things. you should also consider your own bias when you're learning or talking to others about this too. Mike's in New York. He's a Bloomberg guy. He's in this bubble. I mean, he was certain. He spoke about it not just as fact, but as dismissing the alternative. He said Kamala Harris was clearly going to win. He would always point to his mother, who's a rhino, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Just basically, if you're a Republican, you have an R next to your name, and you don't support Trump, you're basically a rhino by definition. But because of his mom's opinions, he kind of assumed, and the bubble he lives in there, that it was a clear-cut landslide victory. It wasn't going to be close. And obviously we saw what happened with that. And he, unlike a lot of other people, like Peter Schiff, he admits when he's wrong. And then they start dissecting why and how that happened and what's going to happen going forward. It's just an amazing show. I hope they don't tweak it. It was really popular all through last year and parts of 2023 when I started watching it. Scott had hinted that he was going to kind of change up the format a little bit. I'm glad they didn't, because what they have right there is gold. He has a lot of other good shows, like on Friday, NLW, where they talk about kind of what's happened in the week, and his guests are just top tier. So it's definitely a channel I'd recommend subscribing to. Another one is more of a newer one on my radar from year and a half or so. It's Elliot from Elliot Trades. What I like about him, I mean, he focuses on altcoins big time. What I like about him is he has the same opinion I do as far as what altcoins, what sectors of altcoins are gonna fly and are gonna kind of be the narrative this next bull run that we're currently in and about to shoot off on a parabolic bull run. When it's altcoin season, he thinks gaming, AI, and memes are the three types of tokens that are gonna just blow up, and I agree. He focuses on those extensively. He'll have shows where he goes through 20 or 30 different coins and projects, and he started his own project in the gaming space, and he's got a really good insight into that part of the sectors. And what he talks about for AI and memes, I agree with too. And what's interesting too is he has a pretty good production quality. It's fun to listen to him. It's not boring. It's not just somebody talking to the camera like me nonstop. His are a little bit funner. I mean, he sends his, he records his content, he sends it to an editor, the editor makes it look nice and presents it well and has little, animations and all that kind of stuff. It's a good watch, so that's definitely one I'd recommend. Last year, this next person had a little bit of change in their employment. Nate Martin, he was formerly of 99 Bitcoin. And that 99 Bitcoins channel would have a weekly 3 to 5 minute summary of the week. And Nate would basically just read a script talking about what's happening with Bitcoin and kind of the markets in general when it comes to crypto. And then the channel got bought out, and that channel dumped him and started promoting a bunch of junk. And the quality just went downhill, and people were wondering if it got hacked and if somebody stole the account. It was that big of a change. Turns out it was just the new ownership, and they didn't want Nate. They wanted to go their own route. So Nate started his own channel, actually kind of revived one of his old ones and is still doing it right now. So that's one I highly recommend. That's the type I recommend to my mom. It's very easy to understand. He talks about the main things that have happened that week, and his new content is a little less polished because it's not highly produced, but the content's there, and that's really what matters. And I really like his style of delivery. So I look forward to seeing more from him too. Another new one on the list is Gary Cardone. Like, I've heard of Grant, his brother. He's a big real estate guy. I've never followed his material, but I've known he's been a big real estate guy. But Gary is all in on Bitcoin, and I love his discussions. It's kind of funny. He has this way of talking that normally annoys me. I count how many times he says, dude, like, this is going to the moon, dude. Like, you have no idea, dude. But his conversations are good. There's some knowledge you learn, but it's really just a nice way to think about investing and what your focus should be if you're really all in on Bitcoin. I don't recommend his X channel, his X content, because he's in spaces a lot. But he likes to eat a lot while he's on the spaces. And so if you like listening to an elderly man eat food while he's trying to talk, I should say, if that doesn't bother you, we'll go for it. To me, it's hard to stomach that, so I don't really deal with his spaces or his X all too much. But definitely love the guy. I like his kind of content. It's different. It's not repetitive like a lot of other things, like a lot of other content creators. This next one might be a little controversial, but BitBoy. So Ben Armstrong, you can't have him not at least being discussed in the list. He's one of the most popular followed YouTubers out there. His life is a train wreck. He's definitely not somebody to look up to. His ethics and his morals are not something that I really care about, because I'm not hanging out with the guy. I want the knowledge, and he would come out with a lot of conversations about altcoins that I'd never heard of before. And he's always been current on news stuff. Granted, I mean, he, lost his family. I mean, he still hangs out with his kids, but got divorced from his wife, had an affair, got arrested, got kicked out of his company, was just, like I said, he's a train wreck. But if you're in the space because you want to learn, I mean, he's got a lot of content that at least puts things on your radar. And that's something that I would recommend. Plus, like I said, he's probably one of the most popular YouTubers out there. Speaking of popularity, you can't really mention a list of top 10 without talking about Altcoin Daily. I think they might be the most subscribed YouTube channel in the crypto space, but as their title says, they produce daily videos, and it's all about altcoins. They every once in a while talk about Bitcoin, and like a lot of influencers, they use the term alpha in a very cringe way, like we're bringing the alpha today, and it's one of the most like beta male things to say. It's just like I said, it's cringeworthy, it's really weird, and they are hardcore in that kind of concept. But they do have daily videos, and they talk sometimes 10 or 15 coins an episode, which is also kind of another problem. They'll talk about 10 plus coins a day, and then 9 months later, one of those will hit, and they'll say, hey, we told you about that coin, you're welcome. Like, I don't think there's a coin out there they haven't mentioned at that rate. But again, it's a good channel to keep it on your radar. I still subscribe to them, but I probably only listen to their videos once every, honestly, 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, once a month. It really depends on if the topic they're covering is something I want to watch. Another one, I debated not having this on the list, but Nicholas Mertens, he's a guy at Data Dash. So he's a perma-bear. I mean, he's been wrong a lot on Bitcoin. In fact, I think he told his paid subscriber group back in 2022 to get out, and I think it was right around 36,000 or something like that. I'm sure people on YouTube that follow him religiously will correct me on that, but it was somewhere right around there. So, for the first few months, it looked like a good call because Bitcoin went all the way down to 17,000. But then it went up, and it kept going up. And he would say, like, when it hit 25, now's not the time to FOMO in. Nicholas Merton there at Data Dash, I'm going to tell you what nobody else is telling you. His intros are so freaking annoying too. He's like, I'm Nicholas Mertens here at Data Dash, and today is September 13th, 2024, and I hope you're having a great day because, and then he inserts some reason that has nothing to do with whether you're having a great day or not. It's just weird. Then come 41,000, he's like, here's what people aren't talking about, here's the specifics. I would not go in at all yet. It hits like 44,000. Here's my final warning to Bitcoin longs. And I think he finally corrected course and said, yes, I was wrong, when it was like 48,000 or something like that. So all the subscribers missed out on a little bit over 100x before he admitted he was wrong. Sorry, 100% gain, 2x, and he eventually corrected that, but he never really acknowledged the reasons why he was wrong. And I'll tell you something about any YouTuber or ex-content creator or anybody that you're following. When we talked about the biases, you should also think about their history and where they come from. He said something back in 2022 when I was following him that made me just stop dead in my tracks. He's like, I've been in the space in crypto for 6 years. This is, 2 years ago. So I've been here a while, longer than a lot of other people. And then before that, I was investing in stocks in the stock market for 6 years. And I'm like, he just used that as a reason why he should be listened to and followed. And I instantly, that was red flags to me. So that meant he would have gotten his start in stocks around 2010, which means he missed the entire financial crisis. He didn't experience any of that in the markets. He missed the dot-com bubble. I mean, you could read back and look back in history, but he hadn't gone through that as an investor. He has only at that point experienced what life was like at like 0 interest rates, free money, easy capital flowing into markets. He had never seen a high rate environment. And what happens when we come off of that? There's a little bit of a blip, but COVID kind of stopped all that. So he actually was pretty inexperienced, in my opinion, and I think a lot of that showed. One of my favorites, though, is Raoul Paul, the journeyman. he runs a company on the side, but he talks a lot about crypto, specifically focusing on Bitcoin, and then kind of the top 3: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. He has some other small stuff, small percentage of his portfolio. Some of them basically like a percent or lower, but I like the way he presents investments, and he really is the epitome of something that was said. Bitcoin's not really about what price you get in; it's about how long you've been in it. That's when you've actually made a lot of money or a lot of capital, and that's kind of what his thesis is about. Investing and holding and not being a day trader. He talks about his little banana zone where he really focuses on the global liquidity markets, the M2, when the capital is going to flow in. Brilliant stuff, and that's definitely a must watch in my opinion. He has this everything code is what he calls it when he talks about liquidity and how the global markets will kind of help benefit assets. And that's not just Bitcoin, but really kind of any kind of equity assets you can invest in. Number 9 is not really a channel or a subscription. It's something that I recommend people do, and that's search on YouTube. There's some people that don't run their own content regularly, but they get interviewed quite a bit. For example, Michael Saylor, definitely one to watch for. Anytime he drops a new interview, especially long format interviews, the half an hour ones, the hour ones are cool, but if it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours or longer, I mean, that stuff is gold. You get in the weeds and he really talks about things that are good to know and how to learn about what his company is doing, what he thinks, and how you can apply your own thoughts to that. So for example, some of the other ones I would search for is like Jack Mallers, the CEO of Strike. He has some really good content when you find it. Mark Yusko, love his stuff. Tom Lee. Tom Lee is an interesting guy. He makes a lot of calls that are right, but he's kind of a mainstream guy. I'll mention a little bit more about him in a minute. And then like Larry Lepard. He's a good one that doesn't have a lot of regular content, but I love his interviews. Like when he gets interviewed by like Scott Melker or any of these other guys, it's definitely something to search for. So that's something I'd keep on your radar. It's not necessarily a subscription, but every once in a while look for that kind of stuff that they put out. Can't have a top 10 list without ending at number 10 about who should you avoid? Who would waste your time? I got quite a few on that list, but I'll just mention a handful. This might upset a few people, and it's okay. If you disagree with me, tell me. Comment why. I actually do read my comments. Rand Nooner from Crypto Banter. Just worthless. I mean, he has no content that is actually educational. Ever. Avoid it. There's just no reason to listen to him. Ben Cowan, I feel bad about putting him on this list, but I have to because if I care about you spending your time and what you're actually listening to, Ben is extremely repetitive. He's the Into the Cryptoverse guy. Very nice guy. And in fact, I would still recommend, if you've not heard of him, if this is the first time you ever heard anybody mention him, check him out. He'll have the same stuff weekly that is repetitive, where the same 3 or 4 months, he'll say the same thing for an hour. But if you haven't watched him, it's a good thing to watch. I like how he focuses a lot on RSI too, and a couple other things, different metrics, and kind of following the cycles. So it's definitely good to watch 2 or 3 of his main ones. But I'm definitely keeping him on the avoid list. There's a lot better content creators out there. Fred Krueger is not a thought leader in this space, but he acts like he is. I mean, his big claim to fame is he made this big Bitcoin book, which, I'm not gonna lie, it's actually pretty cool, but it's a glorified picture book. It's a coffee table book, and somehow that makes him worthwhile. I don't know. He had an interview with 2 of the people that are on this list. British Hodl, not a big fan of that guy, and Giovanni. Any kind of power law discussion, avoid. There was a debate between Giovanni and British Hodl, and like I said, I'm not a big fan of British Hodl. This is when I kind of learned about Giovanni, and it was a discussion about the power law, and British Hodl was just wiping the floor with this guy. I mean, this guy was just losing every kind of argument, and to the point where Giovanni basically just said British Hodl is racist. He's calling him, saying he's calling him different racial terms when he really wasn't. He was debating the actual power law, and it just really turned into a situation where I think even Fred ended up having to block him. I know British Hold'em did. And that's saying a lot when you have these influencers blocking each other, like they're that way out there and way off. It's just, I wouldn't recommend listening to any of those. So what do you guys think? That's my YouTube list. I spend a couple hours every day listening to YouTube, learning about Bitcoin, learning about different crypto, and getting in the space. And it's been very educational, especially this last year since I retired. So let me know, what do you think? Who should be on that list? Who's on there that shouldn't be? Definitely could update this later in the year and get some new ones on there. Real briefly, I'll touch on some X accounts as well. With X, used to be a platform that I didn't spend a lot of time on because it was definitely a political machine that was only allowing one type of acceptable content to be posted. But ever since Elon Musk bought it, and we all know what's happened with actual free speech coming back to X now, there's a lot of good stuff on there. Then you can get it much sooner than mainstream media. So some of these will be a little repetitive, so I'm going to kind of run through them because Elliot trades. So Elliot, I would recommend following him on X. It's kind of the same reason on the YouTube side, like the type of content he brings out about gaming, AI, and memes. But he has pretty frequent posts. So it's a little bit more often than his YouTube content, because his YouTube content's pretty high quality. Twitter posts, X posts are pretty quick to put out, and he puts out a lot of information there. The second thing is Tom Lee. I mentioned searching for him on YouTube. He doesn't really have his own channel where he produces content. I mean, he's running a company. And I'll caveat this with an asterisk mark. A lot of his X posts are reposting other people, saying good things about his private service, his paid for service. And I mean, you would expect somebody to show their own, private company on their own, time on Twitter. So you kind of expect on his X. But the important part is he will link a lot of his interviews. Sometimes he'll have quick little 2-minute, 3-minute segments with CNBC. They'll link them up there. Sometimes he'll just post the video, so you don't have to go find it. Some of the other things he posts on there is like interviews he has with other people in the space. He'll sometimes do interviews and grant interviews with people that aren't very well known, people that are on my radar, people I haven't heard of, and he'll link them. And that's a good way to be able to find other content if you're not able to find it on YouTube. So I'd recommend following him. And just like on the YouTube side, Scott Melker, his posts are pretty beta, pretty vanilla, just kind of like his opinions on his YouTube channel. But he'll highlight some of the guests that are coming up, and some current events type stuff. There's not a lot of spammy stuff on his account, so I definitely would toss that in and do a follow on him. Number 4 is probably going to surprise you. So number 4 on X accounts to follow would be Peter Schiff. Now, I mentioned earlier, and it's factual, it's proven, he's lost this argument. He's been wrong on his opinions on Bitcoin forever, and he will continue being wrong, and he is okay being wrong on that. He's definitely focused a lot more on engagement farming, which is putting outlandish posts that everybody knows is false, trying to bring a point. And he'll shill his company because he makes money on selling gold and buying gold and selling silver, buying silver, basically making money off of people's fears. But he's a wealth of knowledge on economics in general, which is interesting on how he's so wrong on Bitcoin being the most sound, hardest asset ever out there. But he'll talk a lot about the economy, a lot about debt, a lot about governmental issues that are kind of forcing us down this debt spiral. And you can almost interchange anytime he talks something positively about how gold protects people from that, whereas Bitcoin protects people from that, but just times 10. It's just the best asset out there. But he's definitely somebody I would say I would follow. He does struggle a little bit to understand Trump. Either he's kind of forgotten what the first 4 years are like, or maybe he's just buying into the fear and the uncertainty and doubt when it comes to Trump. He doesn't quite understand when some of his posts are put up on his Truth Social and they get shared over to X, that it's not necessarily something he's going to do, but it's a negotiation tactic. It's you start heavy-handed and you get to a result that you want, and he sometimes has trouble understanding that aspect of it. And again, to not sound too contradicting my own list, but I'd recommend following Fred Krueger on X. So unlike his YouTube, he'll attach some extra reasoning on Bitcoin topics. He'll actually respond to other people and their content and share it and then give his own spin on it. But he'll share stuff that's actually current and important. Like one of the most recent ones here, filming this at the end of 2024, Got just a couple days until 2025, and quantum computing was this big scare and everything. And he dug a little bit deeper. He's a really big math guy. Shared a lot of good content that was very helpful on that. And that's something that I would recommend following him. The last couple ones here, number 6 and 7, are kind of the same. It's Wick and Shardy B. Definitely got to follow these characters. These guys are awesome. It's Shardy B. She posts a lot of stuff from this trading alpha program that she purchased from Wick. And I'm not a day trader, so I've never subscribed to it. If you're in the business of wanting to day trade, his indicators on his trading alpha, which you can use in TradingView and get signals pretty quickly, is to me top notch. Like I said, I don't use it because I'm not a day trader. And to me, day trading is if you're going to buy and hold something for less than a year. So I mean, those kind of signals are important if you're wanting to do things short term. Shardy posts a lot, Wick does too as well, but they'll show you some of the signals when they happen. It may not be the instant it happens, so you might miss the best buying point, as if you were subscribing to the product, you can see it when it happens, get into the position or get out timely. They'll still post frequently. It's almost kind of a de facto way to see what's popping, what's going to pop, and what's doing well, and what the program or his technology will kind of indicate what'll be moving next, and you can kind of get that for free just by following them on X. So definitely would recommend them too. That's Shardy B and then Wick. Last, number 8, I can't have a list on X without talking about Elon Musk. Definitely got to follow him. Granted, a lot of his recent posts have been political more than they have in the past for obvious reasons. It's been in the U.S. Election season, and it was a pretty big sweep as far as who won, but there was a lot of money in both camps, and it was pretty contentious, and he obviously had his money and time and effort dedicated to Trump winning. But he'll post a lot of things, especially government-wise, that are good when he talks about funding, debts, government waste, efficiency, a lot of cool stuff there. I'm a big fan about stuff that he's doing with really all his companies, but that's not why I'm recommending him. That's just why I love it. I would recommend it because of the type of stuff he shares is generally high quality and current events, and something that you're not going to see a lot on mainstream media. The fact that he bought Twitter, turned it into X, and it's now much closer to a free speech social media platform than we've ever had. It could revolutionize where the track of the country is going, and in fact the world. It's a really good platform to have discourse on. So I would follow him. A lot of his posts are worthwhile. If you don't, a lot of people will share them anyway, so you're going to see them anyway. So why not just see it before people share it with you? So that's kind of my list on X and YouTube. Notice I didn't have my channel listed anywhere on X or YouTube. I definitely want you to follow and subscribe and like all this content, but I definitely don't have anywhere near the type of quality that these people have on this list. And I'll have in the description, I'll update this with all the links so you don't have to find them. The links to go right to the pages and follow them, or see if you want to follow them, watch a video or two, or see some of their recent posts. But tell me, who did I miss on either list, on X or YouTube? Who should be there, who shouldn't be there? You tell me. I actually do read the comments, and I occasionally reply to them. If you haven't seen some of my other content, I just started a daily, kind of a semi-daily podcast. On my way to the gym, I'll talk about either things going on in the gym, but I'll always add some stuff that's going on with Bitcoin and in the markets. And definitely give me a follow on that. Take a look at it. Tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm okay with that. I actually enjoy that. All right. Hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, check out my other stuff and keep hodling.